Today, we will invite Dr. Hempelmann to discuss with us about AI again. And this time, I think his title looks very interesting. The Enshittification of Academia through AI. The floor is yours.
Yes, thanks for pronouncing it the way you did. I'm not too happy about the term, but I used it, so here we go. Uh, because enshittification has a technical sense which does to some degree apply, but does not apply to all the effects that AI actually has on academia, and I'll get to it, and I just wanted to use the controversial term, you know me. There you go. Okay. So this is where we are. We are in the age of AI, and AI, I submit to you again, if you've heard me speak about this, is hype and politics, at least as much as it is technological advancements. So it is being pushed on us because in some unique um, environment of belief in technology, of almost a religious belief on some parts of that technology can replace other spiritual systems, and that converging with mechanisms of under-regulated capitalism has put AI in our lives in a way that few things have been put in our lives in our lifetime. And more and more people, I would submit, are realizing that this outsized importance is not really warranted. So I'm going to speak a little about the actual place of AI, especially for us in academia, the good and the bad. And the title makes us focus on the bad a little bit, but I will also aim to talk about the good and invite your feedback on it. But yes, AI is supposedly the future everywhere in our life, according to the hype. Everything should be using AI. Everybody should be using AI. AI is basically everywhere already. If you have to sell something, it needs to involve AI. Uh, I received, along with other program coordinators at the university, an exhortation to make AI a value proposition for any degree that we have because people want it. So the consumer has been told AI needs to be the solution for whatever they need. So we, as deliverers of solutions in an increasingly corporatized academic context, we are supposed to deliver solutions with AI because the consumer knows they need it. Um, and of course, I'm using the terms sarcastically because the academic environment is not well modeled entirely on the corporate world. I, again, would submit to you, many administrators disagree on that. Their primary goal for us is to prepare people for the workplace, which in turn will also then be supposedly dominated by AI. So we, in particular, as academics, are supposed to use AI in our daily alienated production of workers for the um, capitalist workplace. But there's another side to it. We are also researchers, and we're also should be using AI in the research that we're doing, which is, of course, deeply entangled with the teaching that we're doing. But yeah, you and your toothbrush better use AI or you're not part of the future. And the future is not really the future. The future is as old as people talking about AI, a term coined prominently in 1956. And here is an ad from 1957. It doesn't use specifically the term AI, but it wants to sell us an amazing electric brain that is already said to have the capabilities that current AI has. This is a continuing theme. It can compute And soon we will have a department of computing, even at our university. It can play games. It reasons. And for some reason, reasons is in quotation marks, but it's creative, right? It composes music, and you see a very complex musical tune there in musical notation. Nah. So AI and the over promises that come with it are 70 years old. And in a way, they're even much older when you think of the original chess playing mechanism that was a human, clad like an Orientalist image of a Turk. So there's nothing new, and why can they sell all this to us in this way? Oh, look, there's something else coming in. What on earth? There's a shark on a motorcycle. Um, let's move on. Why can they say AI to us in that sense? Why can it often be just used as a vacuous marketing term that uses the alluring intelligence label? Well, it is because machines are now doing stuff that the majority of people doesn't understand. They don't know how it works. And not only are machines doing very impressive things, and they are very impressive, but they're doing these things in a human-like fashion. And what makes it human-like is that they are producing language. And that gets us linguists prominently into the picture. Language is one observable behavior that seems to be grounded in this nebulous term of intelligence. But why they can sell AI, the current technology that they label AI to us, is majority of people does not understand how it's working, and it's doing something that appears really amazing. The experts in the field, the linguists and the computer scientists, they mostly understand how it works. And to my amazement, my computer scientist friends, the majority of them are in on the hype. They are super excited uh, about what's been happening since the fall of 2022 when ChatGPT was publicly made available in as a chatbot that's in its name that is based on the current technology, which is large language models. So even the experts are still uh, enthralled. But fundamentally, the current version of AI is a set of technologies that didn't come out of nowhere. It's, as I just mentioned, large language models, which is capturing meaning of language, somehow turning it into numbers that the computer can operate with. And the secret to that is vectors, which have been around as a tool in linguistics prominently since the 90s. So this is a development that didn't come out of nowhere, but it's been paired with developments in machine learning, in a special flavor of machine learning, neural networks, and a specific type of neural network that's labeled transformers, that is implemented with something that's anthropomorphically a theme labeled attention. So vectors to represent language meaning, a certain type of machine learning came together uh, in recent years, and turning basically the whole internet into numbers by way of the vector methodology, and then compressing all the words in the internet and the probabilities of one of these words being near other words into a mathematical model. That's large language models. And that exploded after 2022, seemed to have been producing better and better results in producing language output. It was also paired with image models but all the progress we see in image generation is fundamentally also based on linguistic labels of the images. Language is still at the core of this. So we seem to have been reaching great progress. The progress has recently hit a ceiling. Improvements have become more and more incremental, smaller and smaller. And the researchers in the field started pairing these large language models with techniques that were well known to computational linguistics. So on top of large language models, as they could not get better and better, they added known technologies, developed these further, and I'll look into that a little bit. But I'm giving you my attempt at the new metaphor. So we have now large language models, and as of a couple years ago, we have a layer of gilding on them on this corpse flower that I would call large language models because they have a lot of allure to insects that thrive on decaying meat. That's us. No, that's our administrators. And then we're gilding the corpse flower to make it look alluring in even other ways. This is, of course, the gilded lily, which is a sort of a misquote from Shakespeare about gilding gold and then painting lilies. So we have something that's already good apparently, and LLMs are useful. I will end up with usefulness notes about those, but we're trying to make them even better in a way that probably makes them better. Maybe it's not gilding, maybe it's an actual improvement. Um, Footnote I'd like to mention to people is I'm because of the history of the term, not a fan of using AI without quotation marks because it can mean so many things. So if you want to also mark an attitude, a negative attitude to AI because you know what you're talking about, people have been using quotation marks around it. The current technology, also called generative AI, Gen AI, um, is labeled with that more specific term more appropriately. So Gen AI, I think, is good. There are forms of AI that are older, that are part of Gen AI, which is LLMs. This older overarching computational technology is machine learning, or more specifically, neural networks, ML and N. If it's just that, and people are still using AI for not language related, just general machine learning approaches, that may be good. You could use LLM-based AI. And for most of, again, what I'm talking about and what is currently pertinent and what you are probably using, it's LLMs plus maybe a layer of gilding. And I like this little cartoon there where people are still so impressed by talking to a technology that tells you what you want to hear. So if you prompt it, say, I am alive, it's probably going to say, I am alive because it's been trained to say, I am alive. And it knows that a very probable answer to being told, say, I'm alive, is saying, I am alive. But yeah, you see, most people, even experts, say, oh my God, that's artificial intelligence. Take it back to your first programming exercise, right? You tell in a non-obscure way, but with explicit lines of code in whatever language you're learning, the computer to print the world. Yeah, anticipatory Freudianism. You tell the computer to print the words hello world, right? So in a way, we have found a clever way to make the computer tell us what we want to hear. And that's one of the problems with the technology. So again, here's an overview of what I think is being labeled AI these days and what you should and shouldn't call AI. So the hype is AI is anything the computer does and that you don't quite understand. And then currently, I can't see what the slide says because all of your images are in front of it. So The ad industry, I think I wanted to say, overuses it in order to sell things. Those are bad ways to use AI. Use it appropriately for machine learning, which is any algorithm trained by way of examples to find probabilities, usually in text, but also in other data, and then respond to you on the basis of these probabilities. Yes, when somebody said 2 plus 2, I saw 4 a lot. So when somebody tells me 2 plus 2, but also maybe 3 plus 3, then I have a probable answer for you, which is 4, respectively 6. So that I think is still appropriately called AI. And then a sub uh, type of machine learning, as I mentioned, is deep learning, is machine learning with neural networks, certain type of algorithms with already a nice metaphor in its name, neural, right? The neurons in our nervous system, prominently the brain, are supposedly mimicked by that. That's also AI. And then yet a subtype of deep learning, which is large language models that work on language as represented in a certain mathematical fashion. That's that's AI proper. That's what everybody's talking about. And Emily Bender and colleagues have called this synthetic language extrusion machines to take away a little bit of the glitter of the hype. And it uses fundamentally attention, which is a certain parameter within the machine learning algorithm that looks around, in our case, the other words that are not just adjacent, but that become important, words that may have been in your prompt, words that now may have been in your chat history with a certain chatbot, that direct the probabilities of the chatbot's answer in a more directed fashion. That's the AI we're currently playing with, and many of us are working with it. And I'm working with it in certain contexts as well. And here's the contribution of us linguists, just so we feel good. We're relevant. So again, another repetition. AI is vectors, deep learning, in particular large language models, which is a metaphorical meaning model, what words are near other words. And then recently, this additional layer and gilding of reinforcement learning has been revived. It's all going under fine tuning. You can feed other documents to ChatGPT or Claude or whatever you use and say, hey, have your answer take into account what these other documents are or what this database that I'm also uploading to you are. And you often have to pay a little bit so you can upload a lot of documents. You also have to pay if you want your chat history with the LLM-based chatbot to get longer, because not only is producing output for these chatbots very costly, there's a lot of compute involved. The training is immensely costly, but then keeping track of your chat history makes things even more costly, so you have to have a paid account for that. I'm not going to talk about vectors anymore, but I wanted to give you this little slide because I had so much fun making it. If you are into graphic novels, you hopefully know the Asterix and Obelix cartoons, comics, graphic novels. If you don't, um, you have homework to do. It's about a fictional village in Gaul, where nowadays France sits. It's during the time about 50 of the current time period when Gaul was occupied by the Roman Empire fairly recently by Caesar's conquests there, but this one little village holds out against the Roman colossus that has overtaken all three parts of Gaul. So I'm representing the space of natural language processing as now conquered by LLMs in the stochastic probabilistic approach as of 2022. But linguists are holding out in our village, and we have a secret potion um, that gives us strength to hold out against the Romans with their armies of ChatGPT, Claude, Llama, I guess Llama, and Gemini, whatever you're using. And our secret potion is linguistic knowledge as captured by linguistic theories. And many people in the field now say pairing LLMs as they operate on language, as they reply to your prompt, pairing these with linguistic theories may be a way of further improving it. So there's hope for us. And that's what I'm talking about in the classes for our master's degree in AI, how this pairing can happen and how it may improve further output of LLMs. So here's another problem that you're probably well aware of. Um, Part of the hype, but also just part of the pedagogy of telling us how LLMs work, how AI has always been told to us how it works, is that mechanisms and aspects of it are described in terms that we use for humans when they do intelligent tasks. And that is valuable, but that's also possibly misleading, as all analogies are. But when people tell you computers have memory, they don't have memory in the way that humans do. Actually, they may, because we still don't understand much about memory. And memory is as part of intelligence. Yes, intelligence, we don't even know what that really is, but artificial intelligence clearly has it. There's apparently some way that artificial intelligence represents meaning, and we don't know. But the output seems to be based on some representation of meaning because the output is ever so human-like, anthropomorphic, right? The vectors are called embeddings because embeddings make you feel good. The meaning is embedded in the meaning of everything around them. It's not just cold mathematical vectors. The fundamental improvement on machine learning that has played such a big role in bringing about LLMs was attention. Again, a metaphor. It just uses the numbers that represent other words with different window sizes. How many words left and right of a certain word do I look? How do I pay attention to certain types of words and not other words? That all is metaphors around what computers do. Famously, hallucinations, when LLMs produce things that are not grounded in shared assumptions about factual truth. We're calling that hallucinations, which is again something that humans have, not so much computers. As people developers were working on improving the output of LLMs, you have maybe encountered things like chain of thought prompting, right? Where you give steps in your prompt to the computer to follow so that you may have a little more control over the output. You break things down, so you force the LLM to also follow steps that you then may be able to adjust rather than just throwing a single prompt at it and hoping a probable text comes out that is useful to you. So people have been talking about LLMs having introspection or not, having generally types of thought, etc., etc. LLMs have been referred to as companions. You are supposed to retain your role in whatever language-based task you're involved in with the LLM. The human in the loop is still there. The LLM is a companion that helps, which then lets you think that you retain control. Recently, in the evaluation of output of LLMs, people have prominently talked about the three H's, which is a good concept to keep in mind. So engineers were told to improve what LLMs do, try to put a layer on them so that the output is helpful, harmless, and honest. And then again, what does honesty mean in this sense? In general, I think it's supposed to capture some uh, uh, reflection of a factual basis behind it. But yeah, helpful, be relevant to the current task that the human is prompting the LLM for, harmless, don't produce output or let the human produce output with you that could be unethical in some general form. So the three H's may be helpful. And then what else I threw on this slide is at the bottom towards the center, you see a figure that represents in simplified form the information transmission in the human neurons, and that is the fundamental metaphor for neural machine learning systems, which you see a representation for at the bottom. So people have since then been talking about things work like in the human brain, and we don't know. And maybe they do. And it's intuitive and it's misleading. An interesting development in LLM research I think you should take a look at is Claude's constitution. Um, you can just Google that, you'll find it, but it's a link on this slide where the engineers at Anthropic, who is the company behind Claude, and again, anthropomorphism and so on, right? It's all in there. The engineers have said, we will give an explicit language document, several statements that are a constitution of what we want Claude, our chatbot, to produce and what we don't want it to produce. And then we have clever ways, gilding of the LLM, clever ways in which we inject the statements of our constitution into Claude's output. We have Claude fine-tuned on its constitution. And many of these recent fine-tuning, including reinforcement learning techniques, are done in the attempt to inject the constitution into Claude. So if you want to learn about that, look at what they're doing in Claude, like reinforcement learning purely by AI generated statements. The AI produces something and learns from its own output against certain parameters. Humans are brought in that say this output from Claude is in line with the constitution or not. So all these techniques, you can see the state of the art in that context. But as a friend and colleague of mine always says, what's wrong with all these anthropomorphisms? Isn't a submarine in most relevant senses actually swimming like an animal, like a human is swimming? It's propelling itself in underwater. Why don't you want to call that swimming? Why is it so grating to you that the metaphor is extended? Well, I think it oversells AI. And when marketing oversells, that can lead to dangerous things. I'm not going to talk about the statistical language models. I want to have time for us to talk about what you do with AI in academia and what's good or bad there. So just a quick reminder before I go to my summary in a couple slides. AI, because it learns on the internet as captured at some point in the past, it's not good with facts. Any LLM has a timestamp. It's been trained with the stuff on the internet on date X. Anything that happened after, it will not be able to talk to you about in an honest way. And since training an LLM is an incredibly involved task that uses all this energy and uses all these GPUs and so on, it's not done once a day to keep them updated. So it remains bad with facts on top of the general architecture that's just probabilistic. It's just going to tell you what's likely. It's not actually accessing any type of database in the background that tells you who was president of the United States from year X to Y. It just generally captured probable statements about that type of information as it saw it in many, many, many sentences on the internet. So not good with facts. produces convincingly looking sentences in many languages, even beyond English at this point, and produces these sentences or whole texts in relation to what it learned, whatever else you tell it may be relevant, but mainly against your prompt, right? So it just produces grammatical English sentences that are probable responses to you asking something. And at this point, not just probable, because the engineers learned probable is often harmful. Probable is often not factually based. And what was the third H? Uh, Harmless, honest, and
Helpful.
thank you.
Helpful.
Okay.
Mhm.
Pertaining to the task at hand that you're trying to have it solved. Um, And it does so better than previous technology. It does so interlinguistically, and that makes it all the more dangerous. The more helpful it becomes, the more it lets us let our guard slip and just use it for whatever we think we need to use it for. And if we're not an expert in the task that we're using it for, we have a hard time evaluating whether the output's going to be good. So all this backup and all my implicit politics fully in line with Texas Senate Bill 37 builds up to where are things headed, and then where are things headed in particular in academia. So I already told you training LLMs on more data has reached diminishing returns. The hundreds of billions that were poured into the system for reasons outside of computer science, linguistics, and mainly driven by markets and people's weird spiritualities, have not led to any money really coming back. And we're going to face a big problem around that, most experts say. Um, there just isn't more human data to train things on. Things have been trained on everything that's out there, even copyrighted things. And it's a horrible idea, but people have still done it, to have LLMs produce language and then include that in the training of the next generation of LLMs. Because as you can see, it will converge on a certain biased probability more and more. It uh, will become a circular movement to a mediocre and maybe actually shitty center. So the solutions I already mentioned, hybrid neurosymbolic approaches. Neural is this probabilistic LLM stuff. Symbolic is give the AI information in a structured form where we can actually adjust the information in its structures. Oh, you got it wrong. Who was the 46th president? Well, here's a hard list of presidents of the United States. Whatever output you produce, you cannot violate what's in this list. This has been done. Retrieval-augmented generation was a big label for that kind of work. Currently, more generic reinforcement learning. LLM produces output. Somehow, usually a human does so, it is told that's not good output. LLM produces different output. It's told that's good output. That gets captured in a layer on top of the LLM, and it was rewarded in a way for the good output and not rewarded for the bad output, or even punished for the bad output. So it will produce more of the good, helpful, harmless, honest output. And again, the latest developments, I invite you to look at Claude's constitution in its most recent form. They started that in 2022 already, but the 2026 efforts there are really good. So, changing academia, some thoughts that I grasped from others and tried to structure a little bit, but that could probably be structured in other ways. And here, think along with me, give me feedback, give us feedback. Things that are pretty much bad only and not good is for us as academics, largely on the teacher side, the problems for academic integrity, plagiarism. Who wrote this? If you did this with AI, ultimately, how much did AI do? How much did you do? Who is responsible for this text? Who owns this text anymore? And that is, of course, horrible for learner assessment. We all face students who, through bad design on our part or just unawareness on our part or through the inventiveness of our students, they gave us stuff that probably often unprovably was largely done with AI, right? So learner assessment is affected. We as researchers are affected. There are ways in which LLMs can help us in our research. To what degree do we disclose it when we try to publish it? Often people do not disclose this, which is unethical. And then research published that is in crucial ways based on AI then becomes research that is cited uh, often by people who are unaware that it was AI, with all the problems involved in it, with the hallucinated references in it. Um, Hallucinated references find their ways into structured databases like Google Scholar that we all know and have been using for years in productive ways. But now, even in Google Scholar, you have entries that are possibly completely generated by AI. Researchers have found under their name in Google Scholar papers that somebody else who had used AI have then claimed that you as the researcher wrote and they don't exist. So if you review and edit other people's research, you can no longer be sure about how much of their own thinking process that was part of the writing process is now reflected in publications. So the usual arms race between technologies has started, is well underway, and we're not sure what we can do. Some things can be done. And all of this interacts with the general intertwined writing thinking process. Writing is supposed to reflect thinking. You as a human grow as you write. It's not just you producing a product that then gets published or assessed by your instructor. The actual learning happens by you writing, because that means you thinking, and what productive role versus non-productive role can AI have in that. People have been talking about the decay of critical thinking. Over-reliance on AI makes you produce convincing products, but you have not grown as a thinker, as a participant in a discipline that ultimately is grounded in the people that make up the discipline. Output of AI that may find its way into your teaching materials, in students' products, in your own research, increasingly are homogenized, reflect the bias of the training data. The majority of the language on the internet is by certain populations and not others, that then may reflect something that we used to be able to call inequity, but that we may need to find another label for in certain areas of the planet. So all of that is largely bad, but there's good things. Uh, so for teachers of second languages, AIs produce human-like language output that you can double check and that you can use in your teaching materials, in your assessment materials, in learning materials for students, especially, for example, for minority languages and then otherwise undocumented languages. You may be able to increase language materials there. But you sense the problem around that, right? Teaching materials can increasingly be personalized. You can tell the AI, my current state of learning in this field, in this language is reflected by that? Where do you think I need to improve myself? An instructor can gear future materials for a class based on student output in previous uh, sessions, in previous lectures, in previous units of their class, and see where were the weaknesses, what were people struggling with. And now in my next unit, I will focus on that. You can surely use AI for alienated text creation tasks in your everyday life. Um, Again, we all hate AI generated student emails, right? Please don't do that. I'd rather get an email from you than from an AI. And it's usually obvious. But there are some tasks where we're forced to produce texts and nobody cares about them. There shouldn't be, but it's the reality of everyday work life in academia and elsewhere. I've recently used AIs for red team reviewing output I've done. So I write something, maybe already with AI or just by myself, and then I say, okay, imagine you are somebody who is deeply opposed to the linguistic theory I'm working with and who may be reading this. And I could even say, look at researcher X. Here's their faculty webpage. Imagine they are reading this. What would be their points of critique that I can anticipate with your help and then already make my output respond to that? So these, I think, are good things, not entirely unproblematic things. But in a second, I hope you can share productive things you use it for. Things I'm not so clear about. Yes, it increases efficiency, but that's again focusing on the output, the product. If you only focus on efficiency, then the growth in the process is sidelined, which I phrase here by mirroring it as decreased effectiveness. So yes, your critical thinking was not part of producing this efficient product. Uh, and that is especially used in administrative tasks. In academic administration, people don't care so much about you developing your critical thinking. You're supposed to give me a new value proposition for the curriculum you're developing, or you're supposed to give me a quick assessment of how have you been recruiting and how can you improve that. And another point in academia that most of us will have encountered, people think AI is intersubjective. So if I can have a task comparing A to B, where I want it to be done in an intersubjective way. In the past, I would have had to ask hundreds and thousands of people and then average that and then see if I can see an effect there. But maybe AI is already that mean, not evil, but averaged, but well-informed person who can give me a response to something, and then I can see, A fares with the general intelligent population like this, because the artificially intelligent modeling of the population in a way said X. So I will end here and I will go to a different mode so that I can see your comments and your turn.